Oh, that's
Blistering starts to a tennis match.
in. Shakespeare got it wrong. It wasn't King Lear. It's King Lear.
LeBron James with no regard for human.
Yuvraj Singh finishes things off on style.
This is a News Laundry podcast, and you're listening to NL Playoffs.
Hello and welcome to NL Playoffs. My name is Gautam. I have with me my co-host Aniket. Aniket, say namaste.
Hello world.
Aniket, how has your sports week been, or the sports couple of weeks been?
It's been pretty exciting. We are going to talk about, I think, various sports today. It's going to be one of those episodes where we jump from one sport to the other because a lot has happened along different lines and lengths. Yeah.
By the way, how great was it to have Amit Verma on the podcast? I still kind of can't believe it that we had him. It is still kind of surreal to me that we spoke with him. But yeah, it was such an enlightening conversation. Any of the listeners who haven't listened to it, check our previous episode out. It was with Amit Verma. We spoke about sporting ecosystems, among many other things.
Right. It was a great chat. I got to learn so much. So I'm so excited to just keep doing more of these, have interesting folks out there come on our podcast and teach us. So I'm really excited on that front now.
We also have another special guest. We have back-to-back special guests, Aniket, on the podcast. We have a fellow News Laundry subscriber, which we are so happy that he's joining us. Vikash. Vikash, how are you, man?
Hi Gautam, hi Aniket. It's great to be here. Love to talk about sports any day, anytime. It's just a passion that I carry. Yeah, great to be here.
It's so good to have you because this is exactly what we wanted to do, is start a conversation on sport, and you're a testament that it's happening. So thank you for coming on board.
And that you are a fellow subscriber, it makes us even more proud that you took some time and joined us, because we share that common bond here with News Laundry. So tell us briefly about what you do, Vikash, and how you got into the world of sports and sports watching. I'm sure you play a little bit too. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'll start off with what I do for a living. I'm part of a telecom company. I work for one of the three available in India. If you count BSNL, then it is four. So BSNL is not one of the companies that I work for. Anyways, so I've been a sportsman, a sports person, athlete, a sports enthusiast for as long as I remember. I think from the age of 5, I've been playing some or the other form of competitive cricket. If you count the general matches that keep happening in the small towns. I belong to a very small town, right, in MP, and there's no sports culture there like that is there in Mumbai or say Delhi or some of the bigger cities. Now things are changing a little, but that is where I come from. I come from a very non-sport background in terms of the places where I lived. But thankfully, my father was a footballer, so yeah, that comes in naturally in me. And being three boys' house, I was always inclined towards sports because we were competing for one thing or the other at home. So yeah, that comes naturally to me.
That always helps when one of your parents is a sports person. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun part is that he was left wing forward. Yeah, he represented his university, etc. So he was a fine player, I guess.
And what sports do you love watching, Vikash?
Okay, so I am primarily a cricket enthusiast. I've been playing cricket forever. I represent my organization, right now. I have represented previous organizations as well. So I like football. I usually follow the World Cup and two nations playing each other. I'm more towards that. I'm not too much into league. Field hockey is something that I've really been enthusiastic about, and I've been following field hockey, Indian men's field hockey team from the days of say Dhanraj Pillai and Prabjot and to now Rupinders and Manpreet, etc. So yeah, primarily these three, on and off tennis, yeah, whatever I can get my hands to, yeah.
It's really nice because I found one thing super interesting, saying that you were interested in sport, but there was a drop of reality for all of us there. Like sports was never a thing, right? It was never a mainstream choice for a career, and here we are to change that. So we are glad you're here talking to us about it, because this is what we wanted to do, is like start a conversation, get folks who are interested in this domain. They need not be players, but people are interested to talk about it, and this will hopefully propagate the next generation, because I think we missed our boat on being athletes anymore.
I will have a similar opinion. But I think what we miss out usually is that, like you said, we expect the current generation or the immediate generation or our generation to become a sports enthusiast, as probably have been for some of the Western countries or Europe, specifically European countries, where every generation is of extreme sports enthusiast. This will become a thing after a few generations. They have been following sports for so long, and now the culture is so engraved into their society. Same will go with us. I mean, maybe our kids, and then their kids subsequently will start thinking about sports more seriously.
No, for sure, because I don't expect this to happen tomorrow, and I hope for 2035 World Cup India qualifies in football at least. That's the
That
hope.
will be dream. Yeah, that will be dream. And maybe one of my boys playing there.
For sure.
Yeah, totally, man. So you said your dad played on the left wing, right? When you played football, what did you play? What position did you play?
I usually play right midfield because I'm a right-hander, I guess, and that comes naturally to me. So I usually play right midfield. I'm more of a playmaker, yeah.
Yeah, you should have played. You should have still played left wing, man. You should have still play left wing. Cut back into your right, and shoot it to the top corner. Just kidding.
Yeah, that is something for the professionals.
Yeah, this is round 9. We are one more away from 10 episodes through this podcast. Again, kind of seems weird that we've come this far. We started this on a whim on a WhatsApp group for News Laundry, and here we are. So, as you said, we are going to cover a few sporting topics this time. What do we have as far as the main sporting headlines go, Aniket?
So let's start off with the headlines on the front of, I think, combine both of our favorite sport, which is football. So Premier League was off this week because there were a lot of World Cup qualifiers that actually happened, but there were some interesting managerial changes in the world of football, and directly or indirectly affects both of us in a lot of ways. So I was super excited to talk about them. So first, in the La Liga, Xavi Hernandez is back to coach Barcelona, and this time he's replacing Ronald Koeman, who was our previous coach, who got the I don't want to use the word boot. He got sacked. So, and the world is excited about Xavi Hernandez. Gautam, what do you think?
So it's interesting. We spoke a little bit last week. Well, not last week, a couple of weeks ago when we spoke with Amit, and it was more or less given that he was going to be the manager. He was coaching in Qatar before this. Is that right, or is it China? It's China or Qatar, one of those two places.
Qatar.
So he was doing in Qatar. So he was coaching there. Well, one thing that we would all associate Xavi with more than Spain is Barcelona, right? And how he took to Pep Guardiola system as well as Frank Rijkaard system, but mostly Pep Guardiola system of the tiki-taka style and the La Masia style of playing football. I'm assuming, because I haven't done a whole bunch of research on his previous managerial assignments, I'm assuming he's going to bring in the same spirit. I mean, I can see he's probably much of a bigger star than someone like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Man United, just considering he's also an former club legend. But my guess is two things. First, Barcelona has a lot of pissed off fans. Xavi is definitely going to put a bomb over it, at least for the time being, right? And the crowd will definitely rally behind the team now for sure, which is not the case with Ronald Koeman. And then second thing, which remains to be seen, and he's been saying that, is that he's going to bring the Pep Guardiola style of playing football. So, I mean, let's see what happens. I still think it's going to be a work in progress for a few years here.
So, I think you got some really cool points in there. So one question, you said he's maybe bigger star than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Well, does that actually matter? That's the question I've been asking myself. Like, playing is one thing and managing is a completely different ball game. And especially, like you said, he's cut his teeth in Qatar. he's won the league there, but is it as good as La Liga? Is it like managing Barcelona? I mean, these are questions, me being a Barcelona fan, I'm asking myself.
By the way, I only say I compared him to Oli, and now he's not as big a star as Oli, only in terms of how fans perceive him, right? If you compare Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Xavi, it's not even close. Xavi is the biggest star for that given club, right? So that is just my limited point. Yeah, you're totally right on the coaching things.
Yeah, for sure. So, a lot of fans, the news, everyone's excited. The newsroom seem to be very excited. I have my reservations. It's not with the capability or ability, it's just the timing of this appointment. Like, Barcelona are on a downward slump, and it's going to take someone experienced, someone who's been there, done that. I would love to see Xavi come in and, just keep us in Champions League for now. Like, that's the bar. Like, you've got to be in the Champions League, play Champions League football next year. That's the bar. It feels very funny saying it, but yeah, that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as if he does not have like a good core of young players. They obviously don't have the really big stars. They have aging stars like Aguero, but they really have these up-and-coming young stars like Pedri, and we'll see what happens. As far as those young players go, I think that's where the key now lies with Barcelona, because given their financial troubles, I'm pretty sure they're not going to get someone like a Neymar or a Mbappe, for example. Their main aim is obviously to get out of the 9th place that they're finding themselves in right now. At least they have to get to the top 3 to make it to the Champions League. His immediate aim will be to make it to the Champions League, but obviously the long-term goal is to make sure these young kids become real men like Messi did. So all of these are La Masia graduates, aren't they?
They are, and so the first part of mine, my argument that I made was skepticism. The second part comes with optimism, right? So first part is like, okay, will Xavi do this? Because he's been in Qatar, maybe not the best league, but he has some form of experience. The second question I'm really optimistic about is he comes from the same lineage of Johan Cruyff school of, football that Barcelona has been playing for a while. He's come through the ranks. I think one of the finest people to come out through the ranks, even though their whole team at one point was stellar. We won the Champions League with 11 La Masia players in a team. So it's one of those things. So it's really exciting because he's been there, done that. And it'll be nice to see what he does with the team. Because like you said, we have Pedri, we have Frankie de Jong, who's a world-class player, but he seems to be lost. Under Koeman, this is a personal opinion, but I feel that it was lacking tactically. The team would just assemble like the Avengers and do whatever you want, but now with him coming in, he's making the right noises, so there are going to be some tactical changes. He's focusing on team spirit, effort and stuff like that. He's made the right noises. We'll see where it gets executed and how it gets executed. That's the most important part. So I'm optimistic, and again, because you made a humble brag, I'm going to go back in time. So we play the next thing is we play Espanyol, and 2 years back I was at that very game, so I'm super excited to see how it turns out, and a lot of things have changed in these 2-3 years. Yeah,
there is a certain player called Messi who's not with the team, so that it alone makes a huge difference. But from one star midfielding legend for a club to another, Steven Gerrard has replaced Dean Smith at Aston Villa. Now Gerrard was with the Scottish Rangers. He's ended their drought, but then once the Premier League clubs come calling, you're going to let go of everything you have and you're going to come and manage the Premier League club, right? So what do you make of that appointment?
I'm excited. I like Gerrard. I like what he's done with the Rangers. So, I mean, just for folks who don't follow the Scottish Premier League, not like we do it week in, week out, but he basically got Rangers their first title after, I think, 9 back-to-back seasons where Celtics won it. So he basically revived that team, and he's made a lot of good progresses in the right direction. So he's done a good job at Rangers. It'll be very interesting and very exciting to see what he does with Aston Villa, because they have a good team. So they did very well past 2 years. It'll be interesting to see what he brings in with his movement. Obviously, he's not going to be playing Champions League football with Aston Villa directly, at least not immediately. So let's see how it is. It's a risky move, I guess. But I'm excited to see Gerrard, because Premier League has some of the finest managers in the world right now. So it's super exciting to see this league.
I quite like Dean Smith. I guess his time ran out there, but well, I guess he has better experience than Xavi, right? Because Rangers in the Scottish League is a decent enough league to be competitive in, and to have won the league and breaking Celtic's hegemony is quite a big thing, at least in Scotland. He's another addition to, I guess, our star players growing up, right? We just spoke about Xavi and Steven Gerrard. We have Ole, we had Zidane. Well, Guardiola and Conte are former players, but just in general, just growing up, I guess that's a sign of us becoming old, that our star players, when we were growing up, now becoming managers, makes us a little old, I guess, Aniket. But I will see, if Xavi and Gerrard are at least half as good as what they were as players, I guess they will turn their clubs around, both Villa as well as Barcelona, right?
And both of them right now have what you call the underdog story in some sense, because both of them come in as new fresh managers who are yet to cut their teeth and earn their stars on the battlefield. So I'm excited because I'm always supporting the underdog. So this is my kind of thing, and I'm cheering for them. Like we spoke earlier, I was supporting Lampard, and now it'll be Gerrard in the Premier League and Xavi, and because he's managing my club.
Yeah, let's see what happens there. By the way, as we record this on the 16th of November, our time in America, the FIFA World Cup 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifiers have been going on. I know you've probably kept up with a few games, Aniket. What do you make of it? I know Portugal is in a bit of a danger.
Well, you said everything that I wanted to add, that Portugal is struggling. So is Italy, actually, for a matter of fact. So when we say struggling, they have not qualified directly. So they got to go through the playoffs. So yeah, and that's how it is. It is pretty sad for Portugal because they almost had it wrapped up, in the sense that they were leading 1-0, and I think they went in the defensive. They were at home too, so I think they went defensive. And in these kind of games, when you go defensive, you have everything to lose, and I think they literally lost their qualification guarantee. So we'll see. I don't doubt that for now at least, that they will not qualify through the system or to the playoffs anyways. I still think Portugal and Italy will go through, but we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, usually talent triumphs anything else, usually on for a sports team. The Dutch, by the way, qualified after a break at the FIFA World Cup. I think they have a really good team this time. They have some really young stars. Depay has found his touch back, so it's going to be interesting how Holland show up in Qatar next year. But I'm really looking forward to the Dutch. I think they might be semi-final contenders at least next time around.
Yeah, let's look. I mean, they've always been the team that I don't know. They were called the dark horse a lot of times. The Dutch team. Let's see what they do or what they make of their opportunity. But they've always been a good team in my books.
They are the perennial underdogs, or not the underdogs, perennial dark horses every time. Oh yeah, they'll make the semifinals maybe. Who knows? They might win. They never won. I think they won a Euro in '88, I think, or whatever. I think it's 90, I think. Anyway, 88, right? I think they won it in '88. Anyway, you should probably get into cricket and we've just finished the T20 World Cup in the Middle East. So let's get into that a little bit. First, let's start with India, I guess. What do you think went wrong with India this time? We saw Jasprit Bumrah talk about the whole bubble after bubble, and there was a bit of a fatigue thing going on both physically and mentally. Do you think that played into it, or because India more or less looked flaccid? They were really not. It didn't feel like they were at 100%.
I think this has been an issue with the Indian team for some time to come. I mean, they do not start any tournament well, right? First couple of matches, unfortunately, it's been with a lesser team before this, and when it comes to that, they just scrape off that match and then go into the tougher matches later on, and then find their mental, and then go on and do well later on, and then finally struggle with the knockoff matches, playoff matches, etc. But this time what happened is first couple of matches were the toughest one in that group for India. And I think that played a part. Also, at some point in time, I mean, India had a lot of pressure, especially in the Pakistan match, because we've been winning all the matches in the past in World Cup. I think that pressure got to them in reverse, rather than Pakistan having to having to prove that they can win. I think they'd left it to rightly. I mean, to the result. I mean, their effort was to just play a good game. While I thought our players were more concerned about the result than playing the match. And like somebody rightly pointed out, right? This tournament's man of the series or the tournament player of the series was toss. So every time we lost a toss, it was very difficult for us to come back, or for any team for that matter. I mean, even the semis and finals, every team won the toss, won the match, and that's really unfortunate. I think that system is putting too much onus on one particular event, which has no skills, no preparation involved with it. I mean, it's just a toss of coin. I mean, there's no cliche even. And this particular sport, cricket, is too much dependent on the conditions. I mean, it's just not like football or hockey where everybody's playing at the same time and everybody has a equal chance. If it rains in a football match or snows, it's for everyone. It's not for one team who's playing or batting or bowling at one particular time. So it's too much dependent on condition, and toss plays a very, very important role. So I don't know. I mean, whether this would change in near future, but that's where it is. But having said that, coming back to India's form, I think we've depended too much on our openers for long. In first couple of matches, unfortunately, they got out cheaply, and that puts a lot of pressure on the back end, right?
Yeah, and I think they got a bit of their tactics wrong, I think, because in our traditional T20 setup, at least in terms of batting, has been get yourself in, get your eye in, and then accelerate, run between the wickets hard, make sure you have wickets in hand for the first 6 overs, at least preserve them. Once you're in, you can just go bang, 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 and it'll be good. But now with the evolution of T20 and the analytics, and it's all about matchups now, right? Which bowler is good against which batsman is stronger against which bowler. So every team is doing their homework. We saw in the first match, Shaheen Afridi is a guy who always gets wickets at the top. So once that happened, and once they lost wickets, they were immediately found wanting, and they're all almost immediately in the back foot, right? So it was all firefighting after that point. So I think they did get their tactics wrong a little bit. Once the totals were not as high as they were supposed to be, which meant that the bowlers were not given decent enough chance, because they could just play out Bumrah and take other bowlers to task. So yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, in a way, it's good that finally the streak has been broken with India and Pakistan in the World Cups, because I think that was something that was going to go anyway. that was coming, right? So that, in a way, I think it's good.
So I had a few points to add. I broadly agree with what Vikash said, right, about the various aspects. So there are subtle differences I want to talk about in opinion. One was, I agree, is our batting struggled. I think we've been talking about this in prior episodes as well. It was related to Test cricket, but in general, the Indian batting lineup is struggling, at least in my head. And a lot of the times, the bowlers and the bowler batsmen have actually pulled us out of dire situations. And this time, for some reason, I thought the bowlers just looked tired. The whole Indian team looked tired to me. And this brings the age-old question. It's not age-old because IPL is relatively new. But the question is, how do you deal with this, right? The IPL, I have opinions on that, and I'd like to know everyone's opinion about playing in IPL just before the World Cup and how it is. My opinion is you always put your flag over everything else, which is you playing for your country, so it gets utmost priority. IPL can typically be moved around. That's my opinion, because in any normal relative sporting sense, there is fatigue that sets in, so you cannot counter that. Thinking that any player will go fresh from a tournament after playing so many number of games, he'll be fresh. I think people have not done their research when making comments like that, but that's my opinion. And lastly, I wanted to add was toss. That's the point I differed on, which toss. I agree 100% that all the teams that won because of who actually batted first won. So it so happened that way. But I would say that that's giving the easy way out to our team, at least. saying, I mean, again, I'm an armchair pundit out here who's never played any form of professional cricket, who's making comments on the likes of Virat Kohli. Don't want to do that. Don't want to be that person. But I think there are deeper issues, and hopefully Dravid's appointment will fix them. Like, that's the hope. Yep.
I mean, I was not trying to put all the onus on toss. What happens is conditions do play a lot in cricket.
I agree
Especially
with
in the
you.
Middle East with the dew setting in, right?
No, I
With the
agree.
dew setting
I
in
agree
especially,
100% with you on that front. Like the conditions matter because in cricket, of just the dew creates so much of an effect for one team than it does for the other. You don't see that in football, basketball, or any other sports. I agree with you 100%.
So we spoke about what went wrong, what all went wrong for India, but what all went right for Australia this time. And I don't think anybody gave them a chance to win it all. I mean, sure, they have really good players, but I think, is it a question of everybody playing really well at the same time, except for Aaron Finch maybe as a batsman? Because Pat Cummins was awesome. I love Marcus Stoinis, always have rated him highly. David Warner has been in good form. Maxwell has been good. They didn't even need Steve Smith a lot. Their bowling has come up trumps. What did you make of Australia?
I think you forget Mitchell Marsh. I mean, he was underrated in that sense. If you just look at the performance in this particular tournament, I think, yeah, you rightly said they peaked at the right time. You can never say that Australia won't do good in a multi-national tournament, right? Especially in cricket. And if you look at last 4 World Cups, they've won 2. You can never say that Australia won't do good. Yes, they were not being termed as favorite, but yeah, I mean, it was not expected. I was, even in the last match, I was expecting that Australia may falter at the end, even after New Zealand had made 170 odd. I thought they would lose a couple of wickets and just lose the steam, because it is also a matter of scoreboard pressure. But the scoreboard pressure never took to them. I mean, they just blasted the whole scoreboard. So yeah, I think Australia, nobody gave them chance.
It is yeah, kind of unbelievable that they managed to come up and know what to do in these big tournaments and always come up trumps. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about New Zealand, because I'm going to ask a provocative question. I at least ask one provocative question an episode. Do you think, given their team, do you think over the last, let's say, 6 years, so beginning from 2015, right? So they made that World Cup final in Australia. They made the World Cup final in 2019 again. I think they made a semi-final in between in the T20 World Cup. Maybe I might be wrong. They made the World Test Championship final and they won it, and now they made the final again, T20 final again, and lost. So having been in all of these finals and semi-finals and getting into the latter stages of the tournament with the team that they have, which is a very, really strong team, do you think they have underachieved in world tournaments? Because, I mean, it might be a harsh question, but I think it's a fair question to ask if they should have maybe showed more medals than they have now.
So I think it's not last 5-6 years. We've seen this. I mean, I've been following this sport for a long time. By the way, I'm pretty old for that matter. So
don't worry about it.
You're in good company. So yeah.
So I remember my first World Cup that I watched on TV was 87 World Cup. From then on, I mean, that semi-final hat-trick by Chetan Sharma, I think before that they were not there. I mean, in all of the World Cups, they were not there. That was the first semi-final for New Zealand. And after that, they have consistently made into these big tournaments. I mean, in terms of semi-final. The only final that I remember, apart from the last World Cup that we were talking about in England, they won that one in Champions Trophy against India.
2000. In 2000 in Nairobi, yeah.
What is happening right now is there is a lot of expectation out of them. Previously, there was no expectation out of New Zealand team. They would be there, they would compete. I think 92 World Cup was somewhere they really were, pegged midway in the tournament that they should win this. But after that, they never had a strong team like they have right now. I mean, the bowling unit, batting, everyone is playing well. But then when it comes to the final match, apart from Test Championship, they have sort of lost it with the pressure, I guess. But since it is a test match, I think they had enough and more time to be there. And, even if things go south, they can pull it back. But in T20 and one days, this doesn't happen, right? Nobody gets the time.
Correct. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess the weight of expectations and also the goodwill maybe sets the bar a little high for New Zealand in this coming tournament, Aniket.
Yeah, first I must add, I was going like, wow, how do you guys know these dates? Which team played when? It's insane memory both of you have. But predominantly, so here's how I think about it, right? Your question was very thought provoking actually, because there are two aspects of being a world class performer. If it's for an individual or a team, I think the standard is the same. First part is consistency, like you got to be consistent. So you got to give New Zealand 10 on 10 for consistency. Like they are up there, always coming. The second aspect is, can you perform on the big pressure, on the big day when everything is going on? At that point, you can question them. Maybe they don't, maybe they don't have it in them. There are lots of speculations, but you got to give them 10 on 10 for consistency. And it's tough, man. It's very tough to win a World Cup. It is not, I mean, we make it sound so simple to win a World Cup, but it is absolutely, it's difficult, and only people who've been there, done that can talk about it. So that's my opinion. Like they're 10 on 10 for consistency. Lionel Messi won his first trophy with Argentina so late in his career, and I think he was still lucky to have won it. Otherwise, he would have been one of those guys who went, trophyless for his nation. So it is tough. It's not easy to do that. So full respect for that, and that's my limited point.
Totally. Having said that, now that's as far as the T20 World Cup goes.
So
but,
I want to make a shout out though. I thought Pakistan played brilliant against India. I wanted to make that shout out on the record. Their openers were outstanding. I think then they're going to be a crazy team to look out for. Like even the game with Australia, I thought Pakistan had it for a lot of the time. I thought they bowled pretty well, they batted, and then Australia took it. So good to them. But I think they're a very interesting cricket team. Their bowling and batting, especially their openers, and their pace bowler Afridi is really good. So. Shout out to those guys too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Pakistan always had a very good bowling unit, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But now the batting has really come out. I mean, Babar, Rizwan, these two guys are absolutely fantastic. I loved the way they, took that match head on, especially against India. I mean, they were never looking like getting out anywhere. And that is in T20 match where you are going, over 7 and over.
And very casually and no signs of pressure at all.
Yeah, that's right. And that's, I think, pissed a lot of people off because people were expecting some fight from our side, and there was no fight. No fight, especially in Pakistan batting inning. I mean, they were not playing the match. They were just throwing them the ball and they were hitting it out of the park. That's it.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. I think after the 15th over point, I think they'd given up. Our bowler said कि ये तो खत्म है अभी. मतलब I think the shoulders were down, the morale was down. You could see that the game was over after that point of time. So, anyways, I deviate, but it was just a shout out because I thought the openers were doing a spectacular job. Even in the game with Australia, I think it was insane. So yeah.
With that being said, we also have a new tournament, new T20 series starting. I don't know if it's a T20 series or if it's a full series between India and New Zealand.
Yeah.
So but we have Vikash, we have a new T20 captain and a new India coach. So let's start with Dravid. What do you think of Dravid as the India coach? How do you think he will fare? And then also tell us what you think about Rohit Sharma as a T20 captain for India.
I think both of them have proved their mettle before this. I mean, this is just this would have happened before if not for Ravi Shastri and Virat Kohli being there already. If there was a weaker, say, coach or a lesser result here and there, this could have happened. Natural progression could have happened. Rohit Sharma has won, I think, 4 or 5 IPLs. Although I don't value too much the IPL trophy as such. But
neither does Aniket, by the way.
You're a good man, Vikash.
Yeah. I think it's more like a drama that is played out in the garb of cricket. I really diss at IPL, and people would not like me for that. But there it is. I mean, Rohit Sharma has won that. I mean, you can't deny, you can't take that away from him, and you can't take the similar achievement as a coach from Rahul Dravid. I mean, he has given you under 19 World Cups. He has given you players. He has given you good teams, good players coming out of NSA. I think he has proved it. It was only a natural progression from NSA to NCA.
Even
Sorry,
NCA. Yeah,
NCA. Sorry, NCA to the main cricket team coach. That I think was natural. Somewhere I've heard or I've read that Rahul Dravid was brought into this role because he was paid too much in the NCA. There was rumor. I don't know how.
So we discussed in detail about this last few episodes. So looks like there is, I think, based on reporting that's been done, I read one article in the Hindustan Times. There was an article in the Times of India that he was clearly strong-armed into taking up this job. He was reluctant to take Indian coach's job. He was happy where he was at because that he was comfortable. It's the NCA. It was in Bangalore. He was comfortable, but he was kind of strong-armed into taking this job. I think there were some strategic leaks from the board saying that Rahul Dravid is getting paid too high at the NCA, and it's not feasible for him to be the NCA director anymore. Which was like an indication that, hey, if you don't accept the coach's job, you might be out of the job at the NCA.
I think what his strength is, he nurtures player, and when you become a coach of Indian national team, a men's team, there's very little nurture because these guys have been nurtured and brought to the top of the table, top 11 out of 1.3 billion, right? So they do not need nurturing anymore. And his strength is nurturing the players from the ground up. That I think might have made him less comfortable with this job, but it doesn't matter now because he has to deliver at the top of the game. By the way, Rohit Sharma, I don't know if you've noticed, whenever he has won the IPL, he has not done very well as a batsman. And that is something is happening with Virat Kohli. So I don't know how far he can take this if this happens with the national team as well, because stakes are pretty high. I mean, IPL, even people, forget about the last IPL. Nobody would remember who was the finalist apart from the winner. But what happens with national team is every match, every tournament is a high stake tournament. So I don't know how he will take in terms of his batting, and we need him as a batter because Virat Kohli is sort of struggling for last couple of years. KL Rahul will always deliver in one match or the other, so you are sort of sure about that. But the rest of the batting needs a boost. So you are depending on 2-3 players, and out of that, if you make one of them captain, and he's not done too well as a captain as a batsman when he was captaining a team, I think there can be a immediate change after a couple of tournaments because he might not get as much time, unfortunately.
I think there was a very valid point there, and it is a very true point. Captaincy is not easy. You might be the best even if you're Sachin Tendulkar. He couldn't perform when he was a captain, so it is not an easy job. It's not meant for everybody. And I just wanted to add that limited point that it's a tough job, so it does take a toll on your cricket, especially if you're a batsman. I don't know why, but especially if you're a batsman, it does take a toll on your cricket.
And they don't make bowlers captain anymore. I don't see why that cannot happen. I think Ashwin is somebody that I've always thought could make a very, very good captain. Whenever I hear him in different interviews, etc., he comes out as a very good cricket brain, and he has strategic and tactical knowledge of the game, and that's what you want out of a captain. You don't want anything else. I don't know. I mean, bowlers as a captain and being a fellow bowler, I usually think that they have more grip over the game when we are fielding. When it comes to betting, I mean, it's the two players who are there, right? And the messages which come from the dugout or the pavilion, whatever it is these days. So I think bowlers can be given a chance, being a captain. Kapil Dev was
I think there's a reason behind it. Like the first bowler won us the World Cup, then a wicketkeeper won us the World Cup. So now they want a batsman to win you the World Cup. So
Right.
yeah, probably yes. If for that matter, they can have a specialist fielder after we win a World Cup with a batsman, right? As a captain,
Yeah. Yeah.
just
I mean,
just bowling and not batting, and then being a captain. Yeah.
yeah, but I think I like Rohit Sharma as a captain. I think, but as you rightly said, it might put some pressure on him as a batsman or a bat. By the way, we should say batter and bowler now. I think they've made it gender neutral. I think I'm trying hard to focus my brain to keep calling batter and bowlers. I'll try to do that. Yeah, I think at least with Mumbai Indians, they do a lot of homework, right? They have a really good back staff. They have preset strategies in place before they get in. But I think what sets Rohit Sharma apart is he has a really cool head on his shoulders. He gives his bowlers the freedom to set their own fields. If it's a really experienced, let's say if it's a Malinga or a Bumrah, right? He's just like, okay, you have this over and this over, just set your fields. I'm okay with whatever you do. So I think that he looks like he's very empowering. He's obviously a very chill guy. That definitely comes across. So he looks like if agar kuch bura galti kuch ho gayi, to he doesn't really I don't know, jeer at them or cheer at or something like that,
I think T20 as a format is very tactical when you go on the field. I think in the one day you can make a strategy even midway because it is 50 overs and test match is all about strategies. But T20 is more a tactical game, and you do these, who plays what well and who plays where well. So in that sense, number of trophies should give him a lot of badges in terms of being a good tactical captain. But then obviously they have a very good back end staff, like you said. So they do a good homework on each and every player. But doing homework and then finally executing it tactically and in terms of skills is another thing, right?
Awesome. Aniket, any comments on cricket here before we move on?
no, I'm good. Just don't play an IPL before a World Cup again, guys. Please don't do that. No, I'm gonna make one more comment here, just so that I don't come out as that IPL hater. So IPL has done good
Well,
things.
you are an IPL hater.
I am, but I do give it its thing, saying that it has done very good for Indian cricket. The lineup we have today is owed to IPL, and before that we briefly had ICL, if you remember. So to both of these, I think it's very good opportunity. Now, what was only a dream where 11 people could play, now more than a dozen of other people are making their livelihoods out of this, and we should empower our athletes to play in all forms of sports like this. So I'm 100% with that motto. I don't know. I'm torn on how you could do this better, actually. I kind of partially agree with both of you. I say you spread it over the year, and if international players don't want to come, they don't come. Like, you can't have Messi in the Premier League. If he wants to come, he comes. Otherwise, if your league is so good, everybody will want to come and play for your league. So I think, I don't know, free market, I guess. See how the free market capitalist world works out. Yeah.
Let's quickly move on to the world of Formula 1, Aniket, because on Sunday, the 14th of November, we had the Brazilian Grand Prix. Quite a spectacular and eventful race we've had. Not just a race, we had a pre-race, which was a sprint. We had the qualifying. We had Lewis Hamilton penalties, engine box failures, replacing it, coming from the back in the sprint, coming from the back in the Grand Prix. What do you make of the whole thing? It was quite an unbelievable race to watch.
Oh, it was spectacular. I did not expect the race at Sao Paulo to go be this exciting. At least it's surprising. We should dig into it a little bit more. But Brazilian Grand Prix has always had something happen. It's always been interesting. So, well, I should take my word back. But yeah, it was a great race. So just to give context to the listeners on what actually happened at the Interlagos circuit was basically that there were the qualifiers. So generally, typically, it's Friday is the free practice. So the 3 free practice sessions. Saturday is the qualifiers, and Sunday is the feature race, as it's called. But this time they mixed it up a bit, and it was a third sprint race they had. So the qualifiers happened on Friday, and Lewis Hamilton actually was on pole for the qualifier. So he actually had another spectacular drive, and he qualified P1, which is basically for pole for the sprint race. But turns out that he's got penalized. He and his car and his team, so all three of them got penalized for some deviations from the rule. So basically his DRS, which is a drag reduction system, is supposed to open roughly 85 millimeters, but at the corners it opened a few millimeters here and there more. So he got penalized. That's what the rule book says, and he got penalized. But what was interesting was that before this happened, they actually decided to take an engine penalty, because I think every team is allowed to change the engine, I think 3 times, and then each time you change an engine, you take a grid position penalty. So since this was the 4th change or 3rd change, I don't remember, but he took a 5-place grid penalty. So even before the qualifying happened, it was set in stone that because he was using a new engine, which would offer him more power, he would take a grid penalty. So he was supposed to be starting from 5th in the sprint race anyways, because he finished first. Turns out he started from last because he got penalized for this thing. And in all this drama, to add an element of fun to it, it turns out that Max Verstappen went and touched that same very wing after the end of his qualification. So he was fined, I think, £55,000 for touching a car, which is during Parc Fermé, which is not allowed.
It's 50,000 pounds. 50,000 euros and not pounds. So just to clarify, he was fined. Verstappen was fined 50,000 euros because he touched his Hamilton's rear wing. So
he was penalized. But that being said, so what a drive from Lewis Hamilton in 2 races. He drove like a true 7-time world champion in my head. So he came, as you know, Gautam, he came from I think last position to he finished 5th in the sprint race, and then he took a 5-place grid penalty, and he went back to 10th and started the feature race to finish first.
Hamilton, against the odds, has come home to win the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
Yeah, boy! That's how you do it, man. That is how you do it.
Lewis, that is how you overcome a 25-place disqualification.
Neo, amo Brazil.
So that's what happened in the Brazilian Grand Prix. And boy, what did you think? You tell me. I'm always, when you talk F1, I get adrenaline rush, so I keep talking. But tell me, what did you think?
Quite an extraordinary race. For some reason it felt like he had the fastest car on the grid than anybody else, even than the Red Bulls. It's just from the beginning. The sprint was like that. He felt like he was a man on a mission. Even the main race was like that. Just because he made up in the sprint, it was kind of insane. At the end of the first lap, he made up so many places. By the end of 1 or 2 laps, it was insane. Even it was the same for the main race as well. His almost, it felt like inevitable that the overtake of Verstappen was coming, right? It was it seemed very inevitable. Even once he got past Verstappen, he was just out of sight. Once he passed him, he just really took off. So I don't know if he had a better car this time around, if the dynamics of the circuit really helped him or not. I don't think Red Bull got their strategies all wrong either. I think they had a good race at the end. Even Valtteri Bottas fumbled a little bit. That helped Red Bull. Even then, Lewis Hamilton, man. I was talking to my brother. He was saying how annoyingly good he is. It's just you love him, you hate him, doesn't matter. You can't take away the fact that he's a great driver, and he proved it.
You're right on both counts, actually. So the circuit helped Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes team, because Mercedes cars typically have a higher straight line speed, and Red Bull is more good at turns, and they have a better downforce, so they do better in tracks that are turns. So that was one thing Mercedes were expected to do better. Second thing was he had a better car too, because like I said, he had a new engine, and typically the first couple of races with the new engine, and that's why it was strategically done, because there are only 3 races left now for the season to end, so they wanted to end with the most powerful engine. So I think both your observations were correct, is that it was the track, and also the car. But most importantly, it was the man behind the machine. Like the drive he drove, the aggression he drove with. I think in both the races, if you see in the first 2 laps, he goes beyond 5 people or something. Like he drove, and his childhood hero is Ayrton Senna. And I think it wouldn't be wrong to say he brought Senna to life that day on the track. The way he drove, the aggressive style of driving is what I mean. Like, and it's tough. Like when you've been put on the back foot, it requires we're talking about mental aptitude with New Zealand and all that things earlier, but it requires some form of mental fortitude, toughness to actually, say like, okay, I'm going to take this head on and actually do so well. So, it was a brilliant drive.
Only 14 points separate Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton in the championship table. Verstappen is leading by 14 points. And as far as the constructors go, Mercedes is leading them by 11 points. So everything to race for the next 3 races, in the final 3 races. I'm just glad that we have a really good season. We have a very close season. I'm just happy that it's not a runaway leader and it's not one-sided anymore. I'm just glad that we have a rivalry, hopefully for the years to come.
Oh, for sure. And you can also see that in both the drivers, right? Both of them come out after the press conferences. Both of them are like, oh yeah, we absolutely loved it. It was a crazy battle, and they battle hard when they're on the track, and when they're out of it, they enjoy. And I think that's the price you pay for getting an adrenaline junkie out of competition. So they both love the competition. Both are pushing each other, and it's pretty exciting.
I'm really excited for the last 3 races. So let's see what happens.
I'm pretty excited too. So there is Max Verstappen for his debut World Championship, which is hats off to him, and there is Lewis Hamilton for his 8th. So I think either way,
the only driver to have won 8th if he wins it.
Yeah, so it won't be disappointing either ways. And boy, he did fight really hard for this, because if he wouldn't have won this race, there was no way he could have made the difference, and it would have basically gone down to the last race, because then Verstappen, irrespective of the result, would be leading in the next race. So, and he drove like it was his last, and it was a crazy drive.
Back and forth we go.
And also, did you hear to Sebastian Vettel's radio after?
I'm going to touch Hamilton's rear wing.
Don't you dare. Very expensive.
I'm joking. I try the front wing. Maybe it's 25 grand.
So he's a
Vettel
funny
is
guy.
such a he's at a point where he really does not care what people think about him. He's won his championships. He seems like he's a very content driver now.
He's having fun, and he's enjoying every race he's out there.
He's enjoying every race. That's totally true. Before we finish up, Vikash, I just want to kind of give you a brief idea of how this podcast started, right? We actually, both Aniket and me, met on a WhatsApp group that News Laundry had for America. So that's how we kind of started chatting randomly. And I asked him if he wanted to do a podcast. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And that's how it started on a whim. So tell us about your association with News Laundry, Vikash, how you found out News Laundry and how you become a subscriber, and how long have you been a subscriber?
I've been a subscriber for more than a year now. I used to watch Tippani and New Sense on YouTube. I mean, like everybody else, love those shows. Very few Hindi speaking, journalists who you would admire. Miss Chaurasia is absolutely fantastic in that. And if you want to be a Chaurasia, be our Chaurasia. Yeah, Atul Chaurasia and Deepak. So, anyway, so having said that, I love those shows, and I kept hearing that they want to, have this model of making the news free by, having to asking the subscribers to pay, and just one day found the website and went there and paid it. I mean, that's how I became a subscriber, and it's been an enriching after that. It's a no-brainer. If you want a good journalism, you would naturally get attracted towards News Laundry. It's just simple.
Guys, we are tired of saying this, so be like Vikas, go subscribe to News Laundry and support independent media, because the country needs independent media now more than any time else, at least in my living history. So go and pay to any independent media that you support and keep the ecosystem thriving.
Yeah, totally. Before we let you go, Vikas, do you have any sports-based recommendations for us? Anything, doesn't matter.
I do not have a book per se, but I did see a Bad Sport on Netflix. I think the Henry episode is and another one with the football in Italy, I guess.
That was Italy, yeah.
Yeah. Those two were really, really well made, and they open a lot of things. They talk about the sports thing. I mean, having a sports culture is one thing, and then spoiling it with these kind of scams is another. But do watch it so that you know what not to do in long run if you want to, be a sports person in your life. So that's where it is.
Awesome. Before we conclude, Aniket, do you have any?
Yes, I have a recommendation which I found very interesting. So it's related to what we spoke earlier. It's called The Test, and it's on Amazon Prime. It basically follows the Australian cricket team and the journey they've had. So we can include the World Cup, T20 World Cup win, and it starts from all the ball tampering scandal, right? What actually broke out, and it's the cameras in the dressing room, so you can listen to Justin Langer, the new coach, take on, and how Steve Smith, the captain, and then Darren Lehman, who was the coach, stepped down. So it's basically their journey after that and how they work as a team together. I've not finished the series, but I felt like it's worth watching. Even seeing the first just 2-3 episodes, I just felt it's a shout out to them, and they've done a good job in making that series. So that's my recommendation.
It was a well produced documentary. There was a bit of a puff piece aspect to it, I think, here and there, because it was
so that's why I made that disclosure. I've seen, I'm 2 episodes in, so I don't know what happens at the end, but the first 2 episodes are pretty fascinating to recommend it.
I mean, checking out the Ashes battle between Steve Smith and Jofra Archer, I think alone is worth it to watch the whole thing. So once you get to the Ashes part of it, it's really, really good. So just that sequence of 15 minutes or so is amazing. So check that out for sure.
For sure.
My recommendation is also cricket-based. It's a conversation between Nasser Hussain and Michael Atherton on Sky Sports Cricket. It's on YouTube. We will add the link to the notes. Azim Rafiq is a Yorkshire county cricket player in England. He was, by all accounts, there was an independent inquiry that happened. He was racially abused by his own teammates. In their initial internal investigation, the Yorkshire Cricket Club found that it was just quote-unquote banter and it was not particularly offensive. But after even stronger allegations after constant allegations by the player, there was an independent inquiry, and the report now shows that there was clear evidence that he was some racially insensitive comments were uttered against him.
Actually, Gautam, thanks for reminding. Let's talk about this for a minute, because I think this is very important to talk about. Thanks for bringing it up. It slipped my mind. But did you read I'm sure you have, because you brought it up and you remembered. But when I read it, it was sad. It made me feel bad. We are the worst species on the planet. Humans are terrible. It's a statement out there. I mean, come on, folks. I mean, what has happened to the world, the way they treated him. And I'm sure this is not the worst of it. So much is happening, and I'm glad it came out, because I think people need to talk about it. He spoke a lot about turning away, about how his child's death was actually also an issue of which led to harassment and stuff from his boss. But it talks about how he turned away from it. The victim basically, turned away. And a lot of people, I think, in today's world feel that way. And I think it's good that these things have come out, and it's heart-wrenching. I would recommend people, another recommendation, go watch that. It's on YouTube, his whole hearing, if you call it. The whole hearing is there. It's heart-wrenching, and I think more people need to watch that to realize how we as humans treat other humans.
Yeah, totally. And in the clip that I recommended between Nasser Hussain and Michael Atherton, they have a very nuanced discussion as to what happened and what needs to be done and how they need to proceed. I think they're very balanced about what their view was. But yeah, it was quite staggering now that now the sponsors have pulled out. David Lloyd, the Sky Sports commentator, who I really like, came out and apologized because his name was thrown in there and he was apparently a little insensitive in some of his text messages and so on. So as you said, glad it's good that it's coming out. It had to be addressed either way at some point, because we are in 2021, 2022 coming up. It's these sorts of things, nobody's standing up for these, and there's no room for that. Not that there was room for that initially before, but right now there's no way.
I didn't know about this commentator you mentioned, but it's fine. Somebody made a mistake. They come out, they own up to it, they say sorry. I think I'm okay with that. But what's important is we normalize talking about it. Like, it should be okay for somebody to say that, hey, what you're doing to me is not right. I think as a human, we advocate for free speech. I think this should be the bare necessity in our world today.
100% agree. So yeah, check that clip out. Obviously, the final recommendation is News Laundry. Please go and subscribe to News Laundry. Pay to keep news free. Go ahead and click on that subscribe button. I think you can subscribe for 1 year, 2 years. You can subscribe for smaller time periods as well, but we would prefer that you do it for a longer time period. So go to newslaundry.com. Check out our other podcasts. We have Hafta, we have Charcha.
Don't forget to write to us at
yes,
contact@newslaundry.com with NL playoffs on your subject. Or also use the
there's a letters link,
that message drop feature. I think that's enabled. So please drop us an email.
Yeah, catch us on catch News Laundry on YouTube. We as Vikash said, watch Tippani, watch Nuisance, catch our podcasts, Awful and Awesome, Charcha, Hafta, Daily Dose, and the whole lot. So. Hey Vikash, again, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for being a subscriber and willing to participate with us. We hope to have you down the road also at some point.
Yeah, I would love to come back and give my 2 cents. Yeah, anytime.
It was great to have you. Thanks for making it again. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too, guys.
Thanks. Until we talk to you again next time, hopefully with another special guest or just the two of us, two boring hosts. We will talk to you later. Have a good one, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.
All the News Laundry podcasts are available on Stitcher, iTunes, and any other podcast platform.
Please subscribe to News Laundry. Help us keep news independent. To catch all our podcasts on news, pop culture, current affairs, and sport, visit newslaundry.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.